Hello, I'm Barbara Beers, and I'd like to welcome you to my workshop, Spelling and Grammar and Latin, oh my. I'd like to take a few minutes and show you how I coordinate the language arts subjects of spelling, handwriting, reading, grammar, composition, and intro to Latin. According to the method I introduced to you in my workshop, there's a method to the madness. If teaching all your language arts in one curriculum sounds too good to be true, or sounds like a job too big for you to handle, let me assure you that I'm the one systematically teaching the details of all these subjects to you and your students face to face on video all the way through the 4-year study. You reap the benefits of this wonderful method without the labor of attending a myriad of how-to seminars followed by time-consuming preparation. And your students become excellent spellers, writers, and readers without frustration and confusion. Remember, I shared with you the way scholars for centuries have learned academic skills using the example of a carpenter, systematically learning and practicing skills from the smallest part to the whole. We saw that this tends to be the opposite of how modern educators teach today. Carpenters begin by first studying the particular tools they need to learn for building, then learn all the potential uses of those tools and practice with them. Finally, they take those tools, working together with materials and plans to build something useful. Relating this to the language arts subjects, this time-tested method focuses on building a student's skill with English in stages, moving from the particulars to the whole, which ends up eliminating a lot of confusion. In the first stage, a young student begins by learning the tools of English, which are the sounds represented by letters and letter teams, and how to form them on paper. With these tools, he learns how to build words, systematically learning why these words are built the way they are. This is where he learns and practices the rules of English spelling through hearing, saying, writing, and reading as he builds. The final stage of this particular skill is learning to put these words together to express a complete thought and learning how these words relate to each other in these sentences, namely the grammar and composition of English. Let me take you to the beginning of this process and show how I teach a student to reason through the building of English. Of course, the first thing a student needs is a working knowledge of the tools of English. We spend the first 4 weeks focusing on learning the sounds and formations of our single letters and our most common letter teams. Before a child can write these letters, he practices the simple figures needed to write any letter, as you can see on this page titled Circles and Lines. As he learns to pronounce these letters and letter teams, some represent sounds we make when we open our mouth, and we call them vowels. Others represent sounds we make when we close our mouths, and we call them consonants. He learns from the beginning the importance of clear speaking by how we open and close our mouths. Once the student is comfortable with the features of his tools, he begins putting them together to build words, recording them on what I call blueprints, following our theme of a carpenter. These are not just words that he copies off a board or from a book to memorize for a test. Word by word, he hears the word first and is able to assign the correct tools to the spoken sounds. As he says the word, his mind directs his hand to write it, building the word according to the spelling rules he's learning. Finally, he sees what he has written and reads it. Hear, say, write, read. This is the multisensory process where a student actively learns the connection between spelling and reading and becomes skilled in both. If you are wondering about the little musical notes on this page, they indicate spelling rules that I've set to music called rule tunes. This is my unique feature to help students learn the rules more easily. Since every good carpenter always builds according to code, I take the time to illustrate various spelling rules on what I call building codes. Let's look at a few of these together. These building codes highlight some rules that govern consonants and vowels. We learned that C before E, I, or Y always says S. You'll notice it's always, no exceptions. We also learned that G before E, I, or Y may say J. We say may here because there are a few common exceptions to this, such as get, girl, gift, give. But one thing we know for sure is that the only time G says its second sound J is when it's followed by an E, I, or Y. Remember that. I will bring that up again in a few slides. With the vowels, we learn that A, E, O, when you usually say their names at the end of a syllable. Toward the bottom of this page, we learn that base words do not end in I, saying I. Base words do not end in I, substitute Y. And base words do not end in A, saying A. Base words do not end in A, use AY. Probably the rule that most expands a beginning student's spelling and reading ability is learning about silent E's at the end of a word. Silent final E, silent final E. English has 5 reasons for a silent final E. In the order of the most common to the least common, it lets the vowels say its name. You can't end a word in U or V. Let C and G say S and J. Every syllable must have a vowel. No job E. We spend time on each of these reasons, and from this point on in the study, students can tell you why there is a silent E on a word. It is interesting to note that modern educators don't teach any part of this rule except for the first reason. It lets the vowel say its name. The rest of these words would be considered sight words that have to be memorized. Speaking of sight words, let me share a different perspective on sight words than you will get in most reading curricula today. The most common sight word list used by teachers is called the Dolch sight word list. This list of 220 words was compiled in 1936 and arranged according to grade level up to 3rd grade by Edward Dolch, a major proponent of the whole word approach. He claimed that these words had to be memorized by students because they did not follow the accepted phonetic patterns. In fact, modern educators often use this list and others like it to prove that teaching phonics is unreliable and therefore should not be emphasized. But actually, the opposite is true. By following our focused phonics approach of learning the letters and letter teams with the rules that govern how and why we build English words, there are only 19 true sight words in this list of 220. Wow, only 19 that do not follow the patterns we're learning. That number is sure a lot easier to memorize than 220. And when I introduce these sight words as they come up on our list, I will often include either a bit of history to help understand the spelling or show how other related words give us clues. When students have built a couple hundred words, we learn about word families and the rules that expand words with prefixes and suffixes. First of all, will, fill, hill, kill, mill, and still do not make up a word family. Those are just words that have a common pattern to make memorization easier. A true word family begins with a base word, which contains the basic meaning of the word. I use the word place on this building code. To that base word, you can add a prefix to modify the meaning of the word, as in replace. Or you can add an ending of a word known as a suffix to change the part of speech of a word. Adding ment to the verb place gives us the noun placement. At this point, students distinguish suffixes that begin with a vowel from those that begin with a consonant, so that they can learn to add endings to base words they have already learned. They first learn that one-syllable words that end in a vowel and consonant double the final consonant before a vowel suffix. So we see that hot, adding the vowel suffix er, becomes hotter with two T's. One by one, they apply the rule to each of these base words that they already know. Also on this page, we learn that we don't double the letter X in words. And just as important, we learn what happens when we add a consonant suffix. The rule only applies to adding vowel suffix. So in the word cap, the P is not doubled before the consonant suffix full. So they learn not only when to double the final consonant in a base word, but also when not to double it. What this does is train students to reason through the rules, as those rules tell us why words are spelled the way they are. On this building code that expands upon base words that end in a silent E, they learn that words ending in one of the silent final E's are written without the E when adding a vowel suffix. Students will apply this rule word by word before considering a couple of exceptions with change and service. Let's examine the exception change. The silent E is there primarily let the A say its name, change. But it also lets the G say J, as we learned previously. Remember, G before E, I, or Y may say J. The only time a G can say J is when it's followed by an E, I, or Y. So what happens if you add the vowel suffix able, A-B-L-E, and write it without the E? The G would be followed by an A and it would be pronounced changeable. So in this exception, the E is retained in the word changeable, so the G can continue to say J. Of course, at the bottom of the page, what happens when you add a consonant suffix to a base word ending in a silent E? The E is retained in the base and the consonant suffix is just added to it. Please don't ever let anyone convince you that English does not make sense. It only doesn't make sense to those who don't know better. Once the students know all the letters and letter teams, plus have built about 150 words in the blueprints, and have practiced a good many of the spelling rules through various building codes, they are ready to put those words together to write simple sentences and read simple stories. I have found the best way to discourage the reading of pictures and guessing at words is to give them 4-page stories that they read aloud and then illustrate themselves. This is an excellent way to combine reading and art to track reading comprehension in young students, as you can see from the drawings that Genevieve has done here. Adding to the foundations of the process of building words, these words now become the tools for building sentences. And we begin learning the grammar of English through framing codes. We begin identifying the work of words in relationships to the ideas the sentences are expressing. We see here that some of those words name persons or places or things, and we call them nouns. These nouns can be common words such as man, woman, city, state, day, or month, but they can also name specific persons, places, and things called proper nouns. We learn that some of the words we have built describe those nouns and are called adjectives. Some are actions called verbs, and those base verbs can have helping verbs to pinpoint the exact time of the action. Along the way, students are introduced to grammar tunes to help them easily identify certain grammar concepts, such as this one, naming the helping verbs. I can name the common helping verbs that are used with the base verb to tell us when the action of the base verb takes place. Am, are, is, was, were, will, do, does, did, have, has, had, be, being, been. Use this punctuation. To make a singular noun possessive, add an apostrophe S. If a plural noun doesn't end in S, add an apostrophe S. But if the last letter of a plural noun is an S, then just add an apostrophe. Pronoun is the name of a word that takes the place of a noun, and we learn the specific pronouns that are used as subjects: I, you, he, she, it, we, they, and pronouns that are used as objects: me, you, him, her, it, us, them. To distinguish them, we learn a grammar tune for each, and suddenly grammar becomes easy. Progressing into the next level, you'll notice that the manuscript printing has been replaced by a simple cursive taught in detail along the way. Expanding on the parts of a sentence, parts of speech, and grammar tunes, students learn some framing keys to give them clues to how words can be used in a sentence. A good test to decide if a word such as book is a noun is to say one book, many books. That makes sense in the singular and plural, so book is a noun. If we test the word ran by saying one ran, many rans, that does not make sense. So we know ran is not a noun. These framing keys can also distinguish between adjectives, verbs, and prepositions. In our final level, we expand our grammar to introduce complex sentence structures by building what I call scaffolding in my building theme to show a picture of the relationships of words in these more challenging sentences. Each of the parts of speech represented in sentences becomes clear in these word pictures, and the markings we do to analyze sentences will carry over into the advanced work in the Latin Road to English Grammar. Concurrently with the building of spelling, handwriting, reading, and grammar skills, our study of composition begins with young students writing original sentences and being guided through writing simple paragraphs. They quickly progress to reading and studying quality children's literature, learning how great authors paint pictures with words by use of many literary elements, and then coordinate the grammar they're learning. With each literature study, they build a 65 to 75 page notebook of their writing, experiencing, taking notes from the reading, turning those notes into outlines, and outlines into sentences, then paragraphs. Now, you might think that the study of these language arts skills are all students need, but wait, there's more. And it is the unique feature of my study, literally the rest of the story. The reason that English spelling remains a mystery to most children and adults alike is that no one teaches that modern English incorporates two styles of spelling, each with their own characteristics and principles for building words. English is basically a Germanic language in its structure, and we retain about 30% of our German roots in English. So this first style applies to words of what is known as the Old High German. It affects all our one-syllable words and most two-syllable words found in the early elementary vocabulary. These are the more common vocabulary such as water, house, many, like, truth. Compound words made up of common everyday words such as because, forever, today, and without is characteristic of this style. And of course, the spelling rules we master in the early years apply to these words. But there is another style of English spelling that cannot be ignored if you really want to know English well. Latin was an active spoken language when people first began writing in modern English, so we borrowed the Latin alphabet, vocabulary, and spelling patterns either directly from Latin or through its daughter languages, French and Italian. Since English is now over 60% Latin-based in vocabulary, learning the principles of building words with Latin components should be of utmost importance. There are several principles that apply beyond just memorizing a few Latin roots that impacts the spelling of our more difficult English words. If you know these principles, you eliminate almost all spelling problems. Unlike the roots in compound words of the native English style, roots from Latin do not stand alone. The example here, spect, is from the Latin spectare, meaning to look at or watch. It takes an added prefix to narrow its meaning, and we get the words respect, inspect, or expect. And the prefixes most often used are Latin prepositions, which retain their meanings in English. So both the prefix and the root have meaning, and how they connect gives us clear clues to English meanings. Add to that the rule of assimilation of Latin components that most affect our English spellings, and you have the full story of English. With this knowledge, students seldom miss silent letters and words and can positively prove when a word contains a double consonant or does not contain a double consonant. Students first learn the tools of the Latin style of spelling by learning the meaning and configuration of the Latin prepositions that act as English prefixes, such as ab, meaning away from. You see that ad means to or toward. A or X means out of. Re, meaning back or again, and sub, meaning under, up from below, and so forth. Then we begin learning the meaning of a different Latin base word each week and narrowing the meanings of several different English words by the addition of our various prefixes. Along the way, we learn the rule of assimilation, such as when sub, meaning up from below, is attached to the base word port, meaning carry, which gives us our word support. The literal meanings of the Latin components carry up from below provides us an accurate picture of the meaning of support. And understanding the rule of assimilation lets them know it contains a double P. Finally, students learn and apply over 40 suffix tools placed at the end of base words to change the part of speech so the word can be used differently. With these clues, students can discern between the spellings of runner, or as in dollar, or as in actor. They can know for sure that the suffix in the word expectant is ANT, and the suffix in the word consistent is ENT. They can know for sure that the suffix in the word livable is ABLE, and the suffix in the word terrible is IBLE. They can know for sure that any word ending the suffix meant or ship or ness are nouns, and words ending in the suffix OUS or less, LESS, are adjectives. So you can see that the Latin style of spelling gives students confidence and accuracy that most students never have. And in 4 years from the beginning, I can help your students become confident spellers, excellent writers, enthusiastic readers, proficient in both grammar and Latin. If you would like more information, samples, and downloads for the Phonics Road to Spelling and Reading or the Latin Road to English Grammar, I invite you to visit our website at www.scolastudies.com. You can also contact me through the website where I can answer any questions you might have. Thank you for joining me today.